거울아, 거울아. 거울아, 거울아.
Who is the fairest of them all?
Snow White. The queen placed a few apples in a basket and brought them to the witchcraft room. Then she began to recite a spell. Abracadabra, brew the poison to snuff out a life. Abracadabra, create the venom to kill Snow White. Abracadabra, with just one bite, let her last breath be taken. Coat the apple with deadly poison. Abracadabra. The queen, holding the poisoned apple, set out to find Snow White, disguised as a kind old fruit vendor. Apples for sale. Sweet and juicy apples for sale, she called. Oh my, how red that apple is, Snow White remarked. It looks so delicious. My, what a surprise to find such a beautiful young lady living deep in the forest. The fairest of them all, no doubt. Won't you buy an apple from me, dear? The old woman urged. Apple lady, I would love to buy one, but I have no money. Besides, the dwarfs told me not to open the door for anyone when they are not home. Oh, don't worry about money, dear. Just take a bite. It's so delicious. I couldn't bear to eat it all by myself, the old woman insisted. Here. Snow White swallowed hard, staring at the bright red apple. Just one bite? Now White took the apple from the queen's hand, and as soon as she bit into the bright red fruit, she collapsed with a faint thud. He, the queen chuckled. With a wicked smile, she transformed back into her royal self and returned to the castle. Once there, she stood before the mirror once again. Mirror, mirror, who is the fairest of them all? It is you, Queen Evil. You are the fairest in all the land. Oh ho 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 ho. Anyone who dares to be more beautiful than me, I will kill them. No matter who they are, I'll kill them all. When the dwarfs returned home from their work, they found Snow White collapsed on the ground. Princess, 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 princess. No, she's not breathing. Oh no. The dwarfs tried every method they could to save Snow White, but she did not wake up. With her eyes closed, Snow White looked as if she were merely sleeping. The dwarfs, unable to bring themselves to bury the princess, who looked as if she were merely sleeping, crafted a glass coffin and laid Snow White inside. They placed the glass coffin in front of their house and cared for her with great devotion each day. The dwarfs kept the coffin clean, making sure it never became dirty, and watched over her tenderly. One day, a tall and handsome prince from a faraway kingdom was passing through the forest when he noticed something shining in the distance. Drawn to the glimmer, he approached it, and as he got closer, he saw a beautiful woman lying asleep inside a glass coffin. My goodness, how can someone be so beautiful? At that moment, the prince's horse suddenly kicked out, accidentally striking the glass coffin. The coffin toppled over, causing the lid to fly open, and Snow White's body rolled out onto the ground. The prince rushed to her side, carefully laying her down. As he did so, something fell from her mouth with a soft thud, a piece of the apple that had been lodged in her throat. As the poisoned piece of apple dislodged from her throat, Snow White awoke. Seeing the handsome prince before her, she immediately fell in love at first sight and said, "You are the one who saved my life. How can I ever repay such kindness?" At Snow White's words, the prince smiled and replied, "Sleeping Beauty of the forest, will you marry me? That is the only reward I wish for." "You want me to become the wife of such a wonderful prince?" "Of course," Snow White answered. The dwarfs were both astonished and overjoyed that Snow White had come back to life and was now to marry the prince. With the dwarfs' heartfelt congratulations and farewells, the prince and Snow White set off for the castle. In truth, the prince had grown weary of his father's constant pressure to marry as soon as possible. He had gone for a walk in the forest to clear his mind. Though many women desired to marry him, none had captured his heart, and so he had been putting off marriage. But who could have guessed that he would meet such a beautiful princess like Snow White in the forest? Jackpot. Should I be grateful for my father's nagging? Or perhaps I should thank the queen who fed Snow White the poisoned apple? Either way, the prince married Snow White, and they lived happily ever after. So, what happened to the queen? When Snow White's father, the king of the White Kingdom, finally learned the truth, he was furious and wanted to kill the queen. However, he couldn't bring himself to execute her, as she was still Snow White's mother. Instead, he spared her life, but gave her the most severe punishment he could. The king found the sorcerer who had cast the mirror's spell and commanded him, "How could you try to kill our precious daughter out of greed for youth and beauty?" The king roared. "Take away the queen's youth at once, turn her into an old and ugly woman, and make her stand in front of a mirror for the rest of her life, so she can always see her reflection." And so, Queen Evil was cursed to spend the rest of her life looking at her aged, withered face in the mirror. Even now, deep within the hidden chambers of the castle, the raspy voice of an old woman can still be heard.
"Mirror, mirror on the wall."
And that was the story of Snow White, wishing everyone a good night.